announcement in the Emerald City. Usually when I ping everyone, people start flying in, so we'll see what happens. Hey Fishy, great to have you. I was telling Sport Monkey, feel free to stay muted, or this is a total open discussion, so if you want to say anything, you totally can. And BZ, what's up, BZ? Good to have you here too.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hey.
I'm driving right now, so I'll just be listening.
Yeah, it's totally fun. Right. Let me... Too tired to talk? Yeah, no worries at all. What's up, Kelcoin? Good to have you here. Oh my god, 6 immediate reacts. We are popular.
You've got my brother asking me, he just DM'd me, he's like, what the fuck is this Emerald City shit?
He said... what are you gonna tell him?
I told him it was a DAO. I'm like, dude, it's the future, it's Web3, it's a DAO. Quit being a twat.
Good, I'm glad you put him in his place.
Oh yeah, he and I go back and forth on crypto and DAOs and such.
I tried explaining to my girlfriend what a DAO was, and she was like, "But what's blockchain?" And so I had to explain what blockchain was, and she's like, "But what's crypto then?" Well, crypto is what you use to make sure that the chain stays blah blah blah. Just like it's an endless rabbit hole.
That's what it is. It literally is an endless rabbit hole. Yeah. I tried to do the same thing to my mom because she was like, "So what are you doing again?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm doing school." And she was like, "Yeah, well, you're also doing that other like blockchain thing." And then the only thing you can really say is like, "Well, Bitcoin," and then they're always like, "Yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin," and then I just go from there.
Yeah. Except it's so much more.
It is so much more. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen, and then we'll get started in a few minutes. People always trickle in towards the end, or in a couple minutes. I never get that far with my girlfriend. She just gives up after mine. Yeah. What's up, Dean? Good to have you here too. Thanks for joining.
Hey man, good. Thanks for organizing it.
Also, Dean, thanks for tweeting on behalf of the Genius account.
Yeah, no worries. I told the team that we just need to be doing more in the ecosystem and supporting our friends and partners. So happy to try and drive a few more folks and remind them if they'd forgotten.
Yeah, whenever you have an event going on, let us know so we can let people know that's happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've got a drop coming up in a couple of weeks, so we'll definitely ask her.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll be tweeting about that for sure. All right. So what time is it now? It's 1 minute. Okay, so we'll wait 2 more minutes and then we'll get going. Hey, Amethyst, great to see you too. I haven't seen you in a bit. Hope you're doing well. Hi. Oh, that stinks, Amethyst. I hope you're feeling somewhat better now. GM Matt, thanks for joining. We got Tommy here. What's up, Tommy? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So, all right, welcome everybody to town hall number 2. We were indexing from 0, so this is actually the 3rd town hall. I should probably, honestly, next time I won't start indexing from 0. It's a little less confusing. But welcome to town hall number 2. There's a lot to go over in this town hall. So I'm going to give sort of like a brief overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to separate things into the 0 for the win. Yeah, I agree, actually. So we're going to separate things into the different guilds. So we're going to talk about the building guild, the educational guild, and the governance guild. And we're going to do that in sections, so it's a little easier to understand. But a general overview is we're going to recap what happened in December. We're going to talk about the Emerald bot. We're going to talk about the reputation system. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we've been sort of discussing over the past few weeks. And welcome, Julian. Thanks for joining as well. All right, so let's get into it. So the first thing, and everyone can see my screen, right? Just to make sure.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So here's the building guild. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this. So, you know, obviously, the first thing to really talk about is the Emerald bot. So this is where we've been getting a lot of attention in the past month and a half. It's currently live on testnet in the Emerald City Discord, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. If you wanted to, you know, the beta tester role is still open for everybody. This is sort of a thing we've just been doing to get people onboarded into like the Emerald City Discord, to get people interested in what we're doing. And so that's been, you know, one of the first things we did. But the more exciting thing that I'm sure a lot of you have noticed already is that the Emerald bot is also live in the Matrix World Discord, in the Thing.fun Discord, in the Floans Discord, and in .find. Thanks to some really cool people that, you know, came into the Emerald City Discord and were like, hey, you know, we saw your bot. We really want to put it in our Discord. And we were like, awesome, let's go ahead and do that. And special shout out to Bam and Kelcoin, because they were actually going into other Discords and saying, hey, we have a bot. We know that you're a project that exists on Flow. Is this something that might interest you? And so they were actually bringing people into our Discord. And they were like, wait a minute, this actually is something that we want. And so that was really helpful for us to sort of outreach to other projects and get people, you know, excited in what we're doing. So actually, I think it might even be cool to show you all like actually in the Discord, because I think it's like cool to see things. So I'm going to put my Discord on the screen here. And if we were to go into, you know, the Matrix World Discord and you go to verify Flow, you know, you can see that you can actually verify your account right here. And, you know, if we were to scroll down on the right-hand side here, we'll see that right here, 77 people are online right now, and all of which have verified that they're a landowner in the Matrix World Discord. So this is a, you know, direct example of people that have verified themselves with our bot. We can check out .find as well. So they also have it in here. Thanks for BR Tech for setting that up. And, you know, people have that role, and Thing.fund as well. So Thing.fund is also set up, you know, and verify NFT. So in all these Discords, we actually are set up, and it's been really great to have that live. So thank you to those people. If you're watching that, thank you to those people for helping us out. And also a special shout out to BT.Wood for helping me debug the Emerald bot a lot. So a special shout out there. So what next, right? So what other features can we add to this bot? So this is sort of something that we're constantly talking about over and over again, because we want to, you know, improve it for projects. And, you know, as we talk to more and more projects, we're going to figure out some features that we can add. So that's going to continue going on. But this is something that we should keep in the back of our minds. But some more things that, you know, we've been talking about more recently that I think are going to take higher priority is, you know, maybe can we talk to more DAO projects and see what they need, right? So that's whatever. But the documentation part. So where will, you know, we want people to be able to set this up on their own. And not have to, you know, come to Emerald City and say, hey, Jacob, I want this set up. You know, how can I do it? We want people to be able to look at some docs and be able to do it on their own. And it's actually really simple. It only requires like one line of code to actually get it running. So where will it live? In Notion, Gitbook, Emerald City website. we were sort of talking about, okay, what would the documentation even look like? And if we were to do it, where would it live? Now, I think Calcoin and others have mentioned that maybe it'd be helpful to put it on Notion or Gitbook, and then maybe we could reference it from an Emerald City website, which we'll talk about in a sec here. But this is something that maybe we should start thinking about, and I think we should start thinking about, and maybe who will take on this task. So I think it'd be really helpful to maybe get like a group together and figure out two things. Like, one, what will the documentation look like? And two, where will it live? As a hint, the documentation will not be lengthy at all. It'll actually be pretty short because it's very easy to set up the bot and all that, but it will be helpful to have somewhere to put it. So if one of the things we could take away from this town hall is sort of gathering a team around this, that would be really great. And this, can be for technical, non-technical, it doesn't matter at all. Everyone is welcome to contribute to this. And if you have no idea what the bot even is, then I'd be happy to explain it to you so we can get some docs going. So that's the first thing that we should really take away. The second thing is the Emerald City website. So right now it's not really like an Emerald City website per se. It's more just like a link to minting Emerald beta tokens, which we had initially. And I'm thinking of maybe wrapping up that initial beta test soon. Maybe so that there's some cool rarity or I don't know, just something. Maybe, have it be non-accessible for newcomers anymore, since we have an example of Emerald Bot in mainnet Discords. But I think it's cool to have this minting still here because people can test the bot whenever. And then the second one is viewing reputation, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the thing I wanted to sort of talk about here is, what's next for the Emerald City website. So I don't know if Arduino is here. I don't think so. Arduino isn't here, but Arduino had some strong interest in developing the Emerald City website. Dapcoder as well. I know that I think those two, and I think there were others as well that mentioned helping out with the Emerald City website. But we should maybe have some discussions around like what should we have on our website. So announcements, links to documentation, decisions, explanation of who we are. And then again, like maybe setting up a task around this. So if anyone's interested in actually, if you have some front end dev experience, just setting up a very simple website to, maybe explain who we are, have some cool graphics on there, but get people excited. A lot of this is just having a website so that we can send, if people ask, well, what is Emerald City? Instead of saying, please check out the announcements channel, which we do right now. Instead, we would say, hey, you can check out the Emerald City website, and maybe it has two things: a links to some documentation and like an announcements page that just has a list of all our announcements, right? So pretty simple stuff, but it'd be great to sort of form a task team around this. And then the third one here in the building guild is what other products can we try to develop for DAOs on Flow? So this ties into, some conversations we had maybe like a month ago when we were talking about how we could help the Dapper Collective team. So how, we were sort of setting up a list that was like, what other tools could we build? But maybe it's good to start revisiting this question, although I don't think this should be highest priority. I think we should, talk about the documentation and the Emerald City website, and then start thinking about how we can start helping out on other products. So just like BAM and Calcoin are doing, can we talk to other DAOs to see what they need? Or should we focus on, helping out on a voting platform and stuff like that? And we're going to get into sort of the voting / reputation system that we've been talking about next. So that sort of wraps up the building guild. So a lot of that, a lot of the focus here is really on the Emerald bot, since that's where we've been getting a lot of attention. But I'm just going to pause for a second before we get into the governance aspect of things to see if anyone has any initial questions about the building side. Or if people are interested in maybe writing some docs, or here, actually, what worked really well in last town hall was I made a post, and if you're interested in writing docs, do you mind upvoting this message in the text channel? And if you do upvote it, then I'll be reaching out to you after the town hall is over so we can start getting some stuff written. And then if you're interested in maybe developing the website, then please upvote this one and we'll get that going as well. So I know that we have a few people that are not on this call that are interested in the second one, but yeah, so I'm going to leave these here in case you want to. Okay. And so if there's no questions, I'm going to pause for like 10, 20 seconds to see if anyone has anything they want to say, and then we'll get into the governance part.
Airdrops with the bot would be awesome. Not just validation, but airdrops in Discords. Super powerful, I think.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Support Monkey. Thank you for that. So that's totally right. So we were having some discussions about airdrops. So a lot of projects on Flow, I'm sure a lot of you are aware, are interested in like doing airdrops, but they don't really know how to go about that. So how can we maybe tie an airdrop into the Emerald City bot? I think that's a great point. To be honest, I'm not totally sure because I've never, funny enough, I've never really participated in an airdrop, so I don't really know what that would look like. But if there's any way that we could sort of distribute tokens through the Emerald bot, that would be great. I believe that is possible based on my current knowledge of how the bot works, and I think we could set up like a transaction to do that. But it would be interesting to also sort of have that discussion afterwards. So BC says, just wearable NFT makes it tradable and we can verify with the bot. Yeah. Thanks, man, for writing that out. Yeah, so let's we can also revisit that afterwards. I think that's a great addition to add to the bot. And also, if it turns out that other DAOs are interested in that, then that's definitely a feature that we should implement. All right.
Could I add one more thing if you're talking about airdrops?
Yeah, of course.
How about the POAPs? Because there's like a ton of AMAs going on.
Yep.
And there are a lot of POAPs happening with the AMAs.
That's a great point, Julian. So the POAPs, yeah. So that's a really interesting point too, because a lot of, like you said, a lot of projects use the POAPs as like a way of verifying that you came to like the office hours or the AMAs or stuff like that. So it would be really helpful too, because right now the way that's handled, at least from what I've seen, is that they either have people like ping on Discord, or they have them like fill out a form that they were there, or there's some automated process, but I haven't really seen it being done with a bot, at least on Flow. It might be done with collab.land on Ethereum. But we should definitely look into that as well to see how we can support that effort. Definitely agree. Yeah, I totally agree. So that would be really cool. And that is definitely feasible. So let's actually add that to the list as well. Thanks, Julian, for mentioning that.
Sure, and thanks for correcting me. You can tell when somebody's read something versus POAPs, not POAP.
Well, it honestly might even be POAP. I just heard POAP, but I could be wrong about that. But that's funny. All right. So let's get into the governance guild. So,
sorry, Jacob. I don't know if this is part of the building guild, but should we mention or very briefly discuss mirror.xyz?
Oh yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, sure. Actually,
okay.
Well, let's actually do it during the educational segment.
Okay, sure.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, sweet. So now we're going to talk about the governance guild. And so I wanted to start out with a tweet that Chase sent. As many of you may know, a lot of our governance is sort of being not handled, but Chase is advising us on a lot of our governance. And she's really smart. She's brilliant. She's really nice. And she's all over Twitter, and she's, sort of the DAO queen, you could say. But Chase has some really, really valuable insights on DAOs. She's a part of many DAOs. She, has multiple positions in different DAOs like Index Coop and, a lot of different stuff. So it's really great to have Chase sort of advising us on the side. And one of the tweets that she sent recently that I thought was really interesting was she said, being a token holder doesn't always mean you have the context or knowledge required to make decisions. DAOs that ignore this will create suboptimal outcomes, and domain expertise should be embraced, not diluted. So this was something that I thought I wanted to include in this slide because, as some of you may know, in the past month or month and a half, we've been talking a lot about how do we change or start a new initiative in the voting system where it's not just a token, right? So a lot of DAOs out there, or at least a lot of people's perception of DAOs, is to like, okay, I'm gonna make a DAO, I'm gonna launch a token, and I'm gonna have tokens be the main voting factor in my voting power. And we sort of were saying, okay, maybe that doesn't make sense, but it certainly doesn't make sense for Emerald City, right? Maybe that's a good way to vote in other DAOs, but it's definitely not the way to go about it in Emerald City, because Emerald City is founded on the idea of contribution, and people being directly involved in the products that we're releasing to other DAOs on Flow. So it shouldn't really be token based. Of course, if someone if we all had a change in mind and completely disagree with that now, then we could sort of revisit that. But at least what we've been talking about is having a system where we have sort of people voting based on their domain expertise. So that's like the main wording here. So of course we've been exploring this reputation system in which there are different domains. So like educator, treasury, technical, artwork. And, it's actually currently live on testnet. So on the Emerald City webpage, if we were to go to it, you could see your reputation, but it's really just for viewing purposes. There's no actual use for it now. But we were saying, okay, maybe we want people to get skill points, we're calling them, in different domains. So if I'm in the Discord, helping people out on their cadence a lot, like Bjartek or Bam, and I'm constantly answering questions in the Discord, I should be earning some educational skill points. Or if I am helping build the Emerald bot, or I'm helping build the voting system, I should get some technical points. Or if I am, Dean or the Genius project, and I'm helping submit, the Emerald City profile picture and all the artwork for that, I should certainly be earning some artwork skill points, right? And so this is a way of giving people skill points based on where they're contributing in the DAO. And all we've sort of discussed so far is that, that skill points will somehow correlate to voting, right? So instead of it being purely token based, and of course, I guess for legal purposes, it's not, very smart to talk about like, how the token will directly tie into here, although we can sort of hint at it. Of course, if a token were to be introduced, this would be modified a little bit to include that token. But this is sort of like what we're talking about initially, pre-token, while we just have some initial funding, how can we reward people for their contributions and sort of vote based on that? So some key questions here are, how will reputation tie into voting power? So how will these skill points tie into the voting power? How do we distribute these skill points? And who will take on the task of developing the smart contract for it? We can actually take a look at it right now if we wanted to. So right now, the contract that I wrote this up in like 2 seconds, so it's not good at all. But this is sort of the on-chain version of what you're seeing on the Emerald City webpage. So see there's like an enum with like the different types of reputation. You can earn reputation, whatever. So I'm not going to stay on this for too long, but that's sort of what the idea is. But so eventually, who is interested in developing the smart contract for it? Although I think it might be smart to just delay this for now. But we're going to talk about these two questions right now. So how does it tie into voting power? Well, this is I'm not the best with the Google slides, so this looks kind of sloppy, but just stay with me here. So we have two example proposals here, right? And we can picture Alice. Alice is in the middle. Alice has 50, let's just say, educational points, 100 technical points, and 25 what's the other one? Artwork points, right? Let's just say that randomly. So there's some proposals out there that are, people can vote on. And what Chase and I were talking about, and this is totally up for grabs, and if anyone has any comments on this, please unmute yourself. But what Chase and I were talking about is that these proposals will have tags on them. And the tags will be educator, builder, artwork, those little domains that we were talking about on this previous slide, right? We can actually look at it here. So these are the individual tags. And if a tag is present on the proposal, that will add a baseline multiplier to your skill points. So in the governance channel, we went on like a hour-long conversation, all of us, a few of us here. We're talking about who gets to decide the weightings for each proposal. So, if we're talking about proposal 1, who gets to decide that educator is multiplied by 5 or multiplied by 6 or 7? Who makes that decision? Well, what Chase and I were talking about is maybe it would make sense to have just a baseline multiplier, which means that if a proposal is tagged with educator, it multiplies your educational skill points by 5, and that's it. And of course, we can, sort of manipulate. We can talk about what that baseline multiplier should be based on how we think it should impact the vote. But we're going to use 5 as our baseline multiplier for now. So if we look at proposal 1, what is Alice's votes going to be on this subject? And if, like I said, these numbers can be inflated or changed, whatever. But if she has 50 skill points for educational, then if it's tagged with educator, it gets multiplied by 5. That's 250. She has 100 technical, tagged with builder, multiplied by 5. And then for artwork, which is 25, it's not tagged with artwork. So this doesn't get multiplied at all. And you add these votes up, and there's 775 points contributed for on behalf of Alice. And similarly, on the right hand side, we sort of have just the educator tag, so there's no builder involved, and so it just multiplies your educational skill points here. So this is sort of the idea of having like a baseline multiplier for your votes, and seeing how that impacts the vote. So I'm really, if we were to have a conversation about some part of this town hall, this would be awesome because we've had so many discussions around this. So it'd be cool. Did someone want to say something? I think I missed that. Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. So the question here is, I mean, there's obviously many questions here, but one of them is, what is the baseline multiplier for tags? So, whether it's 5, whether it's 2, 3, what would that be? Or, there's a chance that, you guys would think that maybe a baseline multiplier doesn't make sense. Maybe it should be different depending on the vote, all that. One question that I have that I would like to talk more about is, well, how do we know how to tag a proposal? And I think that this gets a little into the weeds, but we can imagine that, if a vote has to do with the Emerald bot, it's automatically, tagged with builder. If it has something to do with, educational resources, it's automatically tagged with educator, something like that. I think would be really cool. The other idea is that, so what way do we decide to put those tags? Yeah, so that's the one thing we were I was questioning. And the other thing that might be interesting is sort of the separation between guilds. So if we imagine guilds as like individual factions almost, with their own sort of like leaders that are, helping to pave the way and make directional goals and stuff like that, maybe each guild has their own sort of voting system where, in the vote, like, for example, when the building guild makes a vote, it automatically gets tagged with builder, but anyone in the DAO can vote on it. But, it's being tagged with builder because it originated from the building guild, right? So maybe that's like a good thing to think about. So is the decision reversible? If it is, then we can just try out different things and just, oh yeah, no. So if we did agree to sort of go with this initial vision, this is something that we could manipulate, like pretty often, at least in the initial phases, right? Because this would initially be on testnet. We would test it out, see if it was working well, all that kind of stuff. So definitely not something that we would have to stick with right away. So multipliers could be inversely proportional to the number of tags. So if there's only one tag, it would be equal to the number of total tags. Interesting. If instead all tags are present, it would be 1. So mathematically, it would be multiplier for a tag equals. Yeah, that's very interesting, right? So what Andrea started talking about is the multipliers for each of these would be inversely proportional. So if we were to imagine, maybe, I think it'd be cool to even do this together. Because there's only one tag here, it gets multiplied by, like 5. But on this side, because there's 2 tags, each needs to be multiplied by like 3, right? So that's sort of what Andrea is talking about, which I think that's a really great idea, actually.
Yeah, if I can just give a little bit more rationale.
Yeah.
The more tags there are, the less a specific type of voter is important, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
No, I like that a lot. Yeah. I really like that. So I'm actually going to make that change so we don't forget about that. I'm just going to put these here just because I think that's a really good idea. And let's think more about that too.
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, this is Bjartek. So
Hey, Bjartek.
I agree, but on some issues, I think it's important to have one group as the primary.
Yep.
But I mean, if like the educational guild proposes something and it's very apparent that this is their primary concern and the other are kind of auxiliary, then they could have equal weight. I don't know. I'm just throwing up ideas, really. But
I completely agree with you. So if we think about this as sort of like, if the educational guild, because right now, when you imagine this DAO, right, we're all very intertwined. We talk about everything together, right? So all of you that are on this call, we've all talked about governance. We've all talked about education, and that's the way it should be, right? It's great to have everyone involved in everything. But when we imagine this DAO growing much bigger, and if we're sort of to create this system for other DAOs on Flow as well, right? Because other DAOs might want to use this system as well. Once it reaches, thousands and thousands and thousands of members, it doesn't really make logical sense for everyone to be involved in everything. And so if we sort of imagine these guilds as like individual factions, right, where the educational guild is focused on their own things and the builder guild is focused on their own things. Let's say the educational guild decides to propose some vote. They should really be, the main people, and like Bjartek said, they should have like the highest decision on that, and that's where we can sort of manipulate these weights to reflect that. But I do think it's cool that in this sense, what I've seen in a lot of DAOs out there, where they have individual guilds and only that guild can vote on certain things. I like this a lot because it allows, even if you're a very technical person, you should still have a say on, the other parts of the DAO, but maybe not as much, right? So that's where these weights are really coming into play. So I'm reading off the thing here. So we should map some user stories to get that balance right. Yeah, I totally agree. So what we can do is sort of map these numbers out and see what makes sense and maybe what's not and stuff like that. So what Bjartek's concern should be referred to how we tag such verify if the tags are appropriate. So that's a great point too. So, if we have a proposal that is mainly educator based and it's clear, but for some reason it gets tagged as builder, how do we do that? And I think that question more ties into how do the tags initially get put on there. I think that's like the main concern because, really a builder tag should never be there if it's not building related. So yeah, the first part of any proposal could be which tags to include on any proposal. That's a good point. So maybe before the proposal is even initialized, maybe there's a discussion around, how to put the tags on. Although, like I said, if we imagine these guilds as like their own little like working groups, a lot of these proposals will be directly coming out of certain like guilds. So if the builder guild, is making a new product, the proposal will be founded by the builder guild, and then it should automatically have the builder tag on it. And, maybe we don't put extra tags on that. So I wonder if tiering people would help. A high tier product guild should get say on engineering guild proposals. So that's sort of so I may be wrong about this, but that sounds like it's almost in each of these working groups there's different tiers of people. So if someone is super involved in the building guild, oh, I see. So so a high tier product guild should say on interesting. So that's actually something that Chase and I were talking about at the very end of our call. We were saying, well, in each of these guilds, if we imagine them as their own systems, then in each of the guilds there will be different sort of groups that have might be higher or lower tiers. So tier might be overall community contribution. Well, that's another great point too. So maybe we should not only keep track of individual skill points, but your overall contribution, which could just be an addition of all three of these variables. So yeah. Can you lose points? So this is sort of getting into the next slide a little bit. So I'm gonna like if you have polls that don't go interesting. So we hadn't talked at all about that. Losing points. What I'm gonna sort of reach out to all of you here. What do you think about losing? Just like off the cuff, I guess.
I think if you should enable losing points, it shouldn't be easy to lose points. We should have some process around it because we don't want negative attitude. We want positive attitude, in my eyes. But another thing I just wanted to mention from the last point, we have to make sure to not make this too complex.
Yep.
A system that is too complex is hard to understand, and that defeats the purpose.
I totally agree.
It has to be pretty easy to do an elevator pitch. And so what is the Emerald DAO governance system? What does it do? How does it work? You should be able to tell people that in an elevator, not through a meeting, right?
Yep. I totally agree. So it should, it definitely should be simple. And I think that, well, I guess I'll ask you, Bjartek, like, what is your initial reaction to something like this where, you have individual skill points and then it's just a baseline multiplier and that's your vote? Does that seem like somewhat reasonable?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's reasonable. I'm just very conscious of the weights in proportion. If they vary for each case, it might be very complex. So let's say you have one case that is primary educational, but the secondary builder and its secondary governance, maybe, then that should have like a fixed set of weights and not have too many varying weights, because then it's almost the people that decide the weights that decide the outcome if they know the system really well, right? And
Yep.
then you just move the power somewhere else, and then it's just, yeah.
Yep.
But I don't know. I guess in this guild, I think we will agree on a lot of things, but we have to ensure that we have a system that when others use it in a DAO that might not be like very talking in the same voice, maybe you have 2 factions or 3 factions. You need to have a system that is fair for those scenarios as well, since we are making tools not just for us, but we are making tools for others as well.
Yeah, I really like that last part. So, with all of this, let's be very conscious that, we're not only designing this sort of system for us, but sort of like the motto of Emerald City is that we're developing this for other DAOs through us. So we are almost the example case. We're the ones that are building these products and these systems. But let's be very mindful that, a lot of these tools and stuff will have, large impacts on the rest of the Flow community if done right. So let's keep that in the back of our minds as well. So thank you, Bartek, for that point. All right.
Yeah, I would love to piggyback on that point, because let's just say that the Education Guild wants more power and they want to overtake the Building Guild. They could throw up a bunch of frivolous proposals, that also have, building tags in order to, create points in that side.
Yep. Yeah. So we should definitely, keep in mind that like the individual guilds within they shouldn't really be in conflict with each other. They should be working together to sort of produce something that makes sense for the overall DAO. So we should think about how we can make these proposals sort of reflect the overall benefit of the whole community and not just specifically one guild. Now, of course, some proposals will, directly benefit one guild, but that doesn't mean it has to harm another. So let's make sure that these individual systems we create are beneficial to the whole community, and that's what it should be, right? We should all be working together to create the best DAO we can. All right. So I'm gonna just pause for 10-20 seconds, and then we'll go on to the next part. All right. Cool. That was awesome. So just a little bit about the distribution of skill points. Now, I want to mention up front that like this is sort of my least favorite slide, only because I created this after a very short conversation I have with Chase. I'm just showing this to all of you to see what you think, but talking a little bit about the distribution, right? So if we go back a couple slides, so let me just go back a little bit. So we talked about how will reputation tie into voting power. So that's what we just talked about. Then how do we distribute them? So that's sort of what this slide is for. So in what quantity will they be distributed? Well, my initial thought is that they will be distributed in a decreasing manner over time per user, so that newcomers aren't completely weeded out of voting. So what I mean by this is, there's a concern that if people are contributing a lot, which is great, right, and they're developing these skill points, then people that are coming into the DAO as newcomers and want to contribute somewhere and want to have a say, they're going to be completely overridden by people that have been here for a year or two or even longer, and so that's not that great, right? So if we imagine this sort of as like a video game, in that if you're in like a game and you're killing monsters and you're gaining experience, right? When you go from level 1 to 10, it's very quick, right? But when you go from level 10 to 20, it's a little more difficult. And when you go from level 110 to 120, it's definitely more difficult. You're still gaining experience, right? And you're still a higher, tier or level, but you're not completely, skyrocketing to the moon with skill points. So 92 to 99 pain, yeah, true. So we want to be mindful of newcomers and make sure that they're not, being discounted for in the DAO as well. So if we imagine this graph, so this is per user, they'll gain points, and then slowly, make it harder and harder and harder. Of course, it won't like level off, I guess, because you should be able to, gain points infinitely, but at a decreasing amount, right? And so then how will they be distributed? Well, there's two. I guess there's two initial options in my head, but leaders. So again, if we imagine these guilds as individual working groups, then there should be hold on one sec. So there should be maybe people that are, if people are demonstrating like high contribution in certain areas, they should sort of rise as leaders in those guilds. And so what a lot of DAOs do right now is, when they're handling payments or when they're handling people, like when they're handling contributions, what they'll do is at the end of the month or at the end of every season, which is typically 1, 2, 3 months, the leaders of a guild will do one of two things. In some DAOs, they'll just distribute skill points directly, or in other cases, they will identify the most active contributors within their guild. So for example, let's say I'm the head of the, builder guild, and I'm like, you know what, Bam, Kelcoin, Andrea, and a few others contributed a lot during this month, right? And I let me mute that. And I identify that, right? So I should give the tokens to them to distribute to people within that guild. So that way, Bam, Kelcoin, Andrea, they all decide who helped me when I was building my product. Who did I see in this guild that was really awesome, right? And the trick is that you can't give points to yourself. So this is sort of like Andrea's applause model, if you think about it, right? Remember we were talking about, Andrea was saying, well, maybe you can applaud others and get skill points based on that. Well, this is sort of like that, right? So you allow people to determine who helped each other. Okay. So easy to enter, hard to master, great solution. Awesome. So leaders equal high point / level. Yeah, something like that. And awesome, yeah. So I don't know how those leaders would get elected. I don't know if it would even be an election system, or maybe it's automated so the people with the highest skill points are these quote unquote leaders. But this is maybe how they will be distributed initially. Because if we think about it, it's really hard to determine how many skill points are equated with what someone's submitting. So if I develop the Emerald bot this month and I submit that at the end of the season, right? Because all these submissions will really be at the end of the season, and you'll be saying, this is what I did. You'll sort of be developing like a sheet of what you did that month. And when you submit that, it's hard to say, okay, this person did X, Y, and Z. They get 57 skill points, right? It doesn't, it's hard to do that. So we want some way of allowing either highly contributive people to determine that, or they identify the active people and allow them to determine that. So what is everyone's initial reaction to this, I guess? Does this sort of make sense, or?
If you're early in the DAO and you do a fair amount, it'll be really hard to catch you.
So you're saying, I guess how so? So like you're saying, if you do a lot and you like become a leader, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, in terms of like leadership positions, how do you ensure that? I tend towards thinking leadership should rotate. It's the kind of thing that shouldn't get vested in one person, and if it's tied to the amount of coins you've made, it'll very quickly follow a standard distribution. It'll fall to 2 or 3 people top. Oh,
I see what you're saying. Yep.
But Jacob, have we thought about reputation not being fungible but being non-fungible, and the non-fungibility is time? So basically, so if you start early and you contribute and then you just fall off, you go away, then you will lose the contributions.
Oh, so like
I'm not sure.
Interesting.
This maybe defeat the purpose of keeping it simple though, because it's not simple anymore. But I'm just saying. So as the previous speaker said, so if somebody is there early and contribute a lot, nobody will be able to catch up to them. But what if you say that early contributions kind of matters less as time go by?
So you're saying that time should almost take away from your like reputation or your skill points, or that like the later in time that you do things, the higher weight they are, or something like that?
It's just a suggestion. I'm not sure if it's a good idea even. I'm just saying we should at least think about it to say that. So
I-
let's say you have 10. Let's say you have 10 seasons, and the things you did in season 1 shouldn't count as much as the things you did in season 10, for instance. But yeah.
So I was thinking of something very similar along the time aspect and seasonal. So how about if at the end of the season, the leaders are elected based on, what they did during that season. So it's more of a timely meritocracy.
Interesting. So that's sort of, so Julian, so what you're talking about is maybe like, so we have January, right? And everyone contributes in January, and then the top contributors in January become the leaders for February. And then everything gets reset in February. And then when you're in February, everyone contributes, and the top contributors in February become the leaders for March, and everything gets reset in March.
Yep.
Interesting. I like that a lot. And that's sort of what Bam is saying, like reputation points expire. The only difference is that like it expires for everyone at the same time, right? When January 1st hits or something like that.
Yeah. So maybe all right, so let me separate the two. So let's say you're an OG on the platform, you've got like 1,000 reputation points, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Those reputation points don't necessarily weigh into the time clock of that season. So, you can still hold on to those. And mind you, I'm sort of thinking of reputation points from the standpoint of like karma or something on Reddit, right?
Yeah.
So you can have all this karma, but during this particular season, what did you do? Okay, you didn't do much. So you can't just jump into the situation at this point and become a leader. But, the folks who really contributed during that time, they become leaders, like you said, the following month. But the person who did accumulate all of these reputation points very early for whatever they did, it's still sort of like a badge of honor, and shows like you've been around or you did something at some point. But right now it's about like who's been active at this stage, because things could things could just go, in a different direction that it's not necessarily your expertise anymore. You could go from web 2 to web 3 type of situation. So you still sort of have that as a number that people can see, but it's about like what your activity is right now.
I really like that a lot. So it's almost like, if we're thinking about this from like a a gamified point of view, it would stink if in your favorite game you just lost all your skill points. So of course we could have some like legacy skill points that just are there but aren't like are proof that you did something. And I think that would be cool in itself, like to prove to your friends that, hey, in 2020 in 21 I was there during the first month of Emerald City. Here's proof of my 50 legacy points, but none of those legacy points have any impact on the current DAO. I think another reason this is really interesting is because a DAO moves very quickly, and there's a lot of different things that happen. And I'm really just reiterating what you said, Julian. But if we think about it, like, because it's moving so quickly, we don't want someone that contributed super intensely during like January, February to have like a very large say during November, December, when a totally new product is up for grabs and there's so many new ideas going on. So it doesn't make sense to have that. So with this, I really, really like this, monthly rolling basis sort of thing. I'm trying to catch up on the chat here, so I'm going to pause for a second.
Hey, Jacob, Purtek again.
Hey.
So I guess some of the points that are in chat now, I think they're really valid. Like you said, previous months are worth 50%. Or my initial suggestion was kind of that we just decide a formula that says that the previous periods are worth increasingly less or decreasingly less, I guess, as time go by, because it's really predictable. And it's still, as Support Monkey said, it wouldn't shock the system. So shocking the system is changing leaders every month. So let's say that just because I'm on vacation one month, that suddenly I'm totally out, right? And if a person is on vacation and it's a conflict in the guild, that might be enough to just force that person totally out if you can't contribute for 1 month. So it's just, I'm thinking there should be some system that ensures that if you are a member that have been very active, you shouldn't just be forced out. And I'm not saying we will do it, because we probably won't do it, but other guilds might, right? Or other DAOs might, if you get me.
Yeah, so so if we think about, like, I wonder what you would think about, like, so instead of doing it per month, let's say someone's out for a month, then maybe that would be sort of cruel to just completely disregard their opinion. But what if we did it on like a rolling 3-month basis or something like that?
Yeah, quarterly.
Yeah, like quarterly.
Yeah, that could work as well. But just, I think we need to experiment with different things and try it out and see how it works, really. Because we could also discuss it with Chase, because she obviously has a lot more experience with DAOs and with how they work and with how. Because I've never been in it. I this is like my first DAO, so I'm totally green on this. But I'm just, how does DAOs work when there are different factions in them, and what are the pitfalls you need to avoid doing, right? So that we
Yeah.
don't develop tools. So we don't develop tools that encourage bad behavior, but rather tools that will diminish bad behavior.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you, Bertek. So my goal is in the next town hall and for future town halls to actually have Chase in here as well, so that we can have all of our conversations open to everybody. And I'm sure she'll have a lot to say about this as well. So I'm a really bad reader, so I can't catch up on the chat, so I'm a little behind, but I'm gonna go with some of the recent messages. So I wonder if we can make a Half-Life system. I think that's a really great idea, right? So you earn some tokens, and then those tokens, you can imagine them just kind of sitting there, and then as time goes on, they decrease in value. You can still use them, but they go down a little bit. And what's cool about that is in that system, I guess, well, obviously, if you're contributing a lot and then take a long break, you'll still have tokens there. They just won't be as valuable in 4 months. So yeah, so like essentially inflation, without like the numbers just like going through the moon. Thank you, Kelcoin. That's really sweet. I gotta put a heart on that. Awesome. So I always try and tie this back to how we can take this like after the meeting, but let's really think about that Half-Life idea, or the general idea of like how we can make sure that these tokens maybe like get less and less valuable over time, but maybe still be there, or also think about Julian's idea, or maybe quarterly the tokens get reset and new leaders get involved and stuff like that. And if these leaders are being elected based on who has the highest contribution, the Half-Life system sort of like handles that as well, because the current leaders, like theoretically, if we do this right, would be the ones that are contributing more recently, right? Because the older tokens would be getting less valuable. So yeah, I know, right? I wish that too. I guess we're gonna have to. Boom! There's a new product. We gotta make a tool. Tools.
I tell you right now, if you make that, what you're like, I come from the social science world. If you had a tool that automated that, that would be worth a lot of money.
We're all gonna be billionaires. There it is, Emerald City billionaires on the loose. All right, awesome. I'm in. Let's go. There it is. Confirmed. We're all Emerald City. That's awesome. All right. Wow. This was I mean, I say this a lot, but that was a really great discussion again. So I think that's all I had. Oh. Okay. So we'll get to that in a second. The next point's gonna be very small, and also I know I want to be conscious of all your time, because I know it's very late for some of you, so I don't want to go over. I'm ordering chains now. Easy. Ripping up my dog. That's so great. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of forge on, just because it's really late for some people, so I want to make sure that they can go to bed and everyone can enjoy their Saturdays. But let's talk a little bit about the treasury and some funding and stuff like that. So current status, we have grants coming in from organizations to help us grow. So one example is Decentology has agreed to provide some funding, and others have reached out as well. So it's very just like, I'm not going to go too in depth on this, but the idea is that we have some funding coming in to help us give to people that are building the website, documentation, all that. And like I said before, the people that said yes to the docs and to the website, we will be providing some sort of like, funding for that. It may be very minimal at first, just because, obviously we're not EC billionaires yet. Although of course we may be in the future. But some things that we might want to start thinking about, and this is something where this is completely out of my level of expertise, so I can't lead on this front. I wish I could, but I just can't. I don't really know what I'm talking about either. But I'd imagine that, we've heard a lot about some legal things with DAOs and stuff like that, and especially in the United States, it's not that easy. So there are legal issues when accepting and distributing funds. Potentially need a legal advisor to help us look into this. The only other DAO I've ever been a part of was called Developer DAO. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but they went through sort of like a legal phase where they were trying to figure out how to handle this sort of stuff, and they reach out to legal advisors. So I'm not saying we're at the point where we're taking in and distributing billions of dollars, although again, we may have that eventually. But we're at a very early phase, but we should definitely be mindful of the fact that we have this lingering in the background, right? So I'm just introducing that here because if we start to accept some funds, maybe we should receive some help. We do not have a multi-sig wallet process yet. So for the people that are doing docs and the website and stuff like that can be coming like sort of out of pocket a little bit. So like that can be coming from me or some like very initial funding, but we don't have like a multi-sig wallet process. And what that means is like a multi-sig wallet, for those of you that don't know, is sort of like, you have like a wallet and you want to have multiple people have a say on what happens to that wallet. So for example, if it's a wallet with, Alice, John, and Bob, then, 2 out of 3 of them or 3 out of 3 of them have to sign a transaction for the transaction to go through. So I don't know if this is something that we want to maybe build in Emerald City. I think this would be really interesting if we did the multi-sig wallet. This exists on Ethereum. I think it's called Gnosis Safe. No, maybe I there's something. The Apple products build this year, awesome. That's really good news. So we could even potentially help out on that front, or however we could help there. But we do not have. So we don't have this yet. Would love to EC collab. So 100%. So I'm gonna 100 react that because that would be awesome. But however we can help, let's do it. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make here is that, so the treasury, we don't have that involved. So the point, I ramble a lot, but the point is that whatever funding is for these very initial projects, like the website, the bot, whatever, the docs, that will be primarily coming from me. And I hate saying that because it sounds like a centralized like leadership thing, and we are a DAO and it should be distributed. But until we have the proper tools necessary, it doesn't really make sense to do that. But of course, I will keep everyone's opinions in mind. Okay.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Jacob. So in the startup world, Y Combinator has kind of been tackling some of these things. You might want to take a look at their safe contracts, and see if it's something that might be able to be manipulated or tweaked a little bit for the DAO. But their safe contract is like their newest evolution of an entity receiving money, and how the folks who have invested or brought money to the table, how they're rewarded. Once again, it's not necessarily for the crypto world, but it could be tweaked for that. So definitely take a look at that.
Interesting.
And the other question that I had, and I'll send you a link to that. The other question I had was, do we know how much money sort of needs to be raised at this point?
We don't. So this is something that I was sort of curious about talking to the people that are like pretty involved in this now, and I guess everyone that's here. I don't know what level of like reward is necessary for some of these things. Like for people that are working on docs and people that are working on the website, I don't know what the reward should look like, whether it's like, I don't know, $100 or whatever it is. So I don't know that kind of thing yet, but I would love to have that conversation with some people, with all of you here.
I mean, short-term cash is always nice, but wouldn't optimally you want to move to quickly giving people Emerald City tokens
Yeah.
and then
Right.
set up a
Yep.
framework for people to exchange those to fiat?
Yes, exactly. So again, like I'm not gonna go too in depth on the token just because I guess it's usually just bad practice to like promise a token or anything before it's actually introduced. But the idea is yes. So in the future, like there would be a token, whether that's in like literally a month or two or what, however long it is, but there would be a token that we would be distributing to people who are contributing, and they would be able to convert that to fiat. And whatever treasury / multi-sig wallet that we have that we work with Dapper Collective to build, we would be storing our Emerald token in that, right? So yes, but at least in the short term, meaning like in the next couple weeks when we don't even have like any idea of a token, we'll have to be distributing some form of like either FUSD or something like that. So
Jacob, one thing that we discussed and brought it up earlier is to kind of have placeholders for the moment, right? If we don't want to, I mean, this is just a random suggestion, but something we were discussing before the break was, what if we had some form of NFT or FT that acts as a placeholder, right? That represents some contribution, and then in the future, once we have all the out and want to,
yep. So
give out funds, then it's based on what NFTs you have.
exactly.
And that's actually the conversation that triggered the whole reputation discussion down the line.
Yeah, I remember that. So yeah, so what you're talking about is more like an like sort of like an airdrop, where if you have an NFT, or like if any of you are involved in like the ENS DAO, if someone had like an ENS domain on Ethereum, they were airdrop tokens. So the idea, and again, this is not being promised or anything like that, but the idea is that whatever skill points you develop, and we could do an NFT, but at least in my head, whatever skill points you develop up until a theoretical token is introduced, you would be airdropped X amount. So if you have a bunch of skill points, you will be airdropped more tokens than if you have no skill points. So that's sort of that idea.
Okay.
That way we wouldn't have to also introduce another idea of an NFT, but open to ideas there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So what that means is, like, in the short run, if we were to give people like $100 for developing the Emerald City website, also keep in mind that they would whoever is doing the docs for the Emerald City website, they will be getting skill points. And so theoretically they would have more like tokens because of that as well. So there's two avenues of rewards. VR Tech, I'm going to thank you. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So that's the treasury. Okay, so I know we got to go. We only have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to skip the slide. Okay, so educational guild. So this is the last guild. So we've almost made it, everyone. We've almost made it. All right. Educational guild. So some updates for me personally. So more videos went out on the channel. I know a lot of you have been have been introduced to the DAO by coming through my YouTube. So I'm very excited about that. There's also more chapters out on the Flow 0 to Jacob course. So if any of you are still learning cadence, totally check those out and ask me questions. Okay, that's just in case anyone was wondering about new educational stuff. Educational updates in general. I just took a screenshot of one of the conversations that was happening in the Emerald City Educational Guild. So a great example of BAM. So I want to give like an online round of applause to BAM, who has shown stellar progress on the cadence front and has been helping a lot of people out in the educational section. So thank you so much, BAM, for helping out, and to all of you that are helping. So, Leo that's here, and Support Monkey, and all of you that are learning cadence through Emerald City. I've seen so many of you take your knowledge and give it back, and that to me means more than anything I've talked about so far. Being able to learn something and give it back is more important than anything that we've talked about. So big round of applause to those of you that have been doing that. So just wanted to throw that out there. So in terms of exorcism, so depressed face here, but hopeful. So we submitted. So for those of you that weren't there in the last town hall, we talked about having an exorcism like course for Cadence. So exorcism is basically this website. I could show it really quickly. So exorcism. So it's this like educational website where there's courses. There's courses for Python, JavaScript, Java. We wanted to add Cadence to this, so I submitted a pull request to add this to their site. They were sort of delayed because of the holidays, right? Totally understandable. And they said we're on a break, but they're working through 10 million GitHub notifications. I'm sure you'll be assisted shortly. So these slides are a little old because we actually got a response that was saying is Cadence Turing complete and some other questions about how to do it. So I responded to them. So we will see if they get back to us soon. So we may have a Cadence course coming out on exorcism, which would be awesome. All right. Last thing. So Bam has been working on a project, which I think has been really cool to see Bam do, because he has taken his learnings and sort of wanted to do a side project. So I'm going to be presenting on behalf of Bam because it's 1 a.m. at Bam's time. So we don't want to wake up the whole household. But I'm going to present this a little bit. So Bam has been working on a little, basically a campaign project, which allows community members to join like campaigns. And so if you imagine like if there's a project or DAO, so let's look at like the Jacob project or the Biartech project, I can have campaigns under my project, and it allows people to sort of sign up for these campaigns, right? So they can put themselves in the campaigns. And so like some things that you can like do with a campaign is you can turn the campaign on and off. The campaigns can be time-based, or there can be like a capacity. So like, for example, only X amount of people can join the campaign, or the campaign expires after a day, or it gets toggled on and off for some projects, right? So some use cases for the tool. It could be a whitelist or campaign tool for starter projects. So what this means is like you want to prove that you were in early on the project. And so, the project or DAO releases like this campaign and you can register yourself and it's proof that you were there early. Registration tools for mass activity. So if there's going to be an airdrop, so if you're like, okay, we want to airdrop to all these people, if you sign up for a form, then you have people sign up and then you can airdrop to them afterwards or something like that. So for some starter projects, so like, the smart contract deployment at the moment is unfriendly. It's just sort of like the problem. It's unfriendly to project teams and DAOs from the efficiency perspective. A campaign whitelist contract can help startups or project teams get an on-chain tool to recognize their early adopters and reward them in the future when their contract is successfully deployed on mainnet. So one example that I actually really like about this is, so I'm a part of the Decentology team. I work there as the Flow developer full-time. And one thing that we did in the past was we had a boot camp called Fast Forward, and we had people signing up through a Google Sheet form, which was super annoying. And it was really hard for us to map out the addresses at the end and give people rewards based on their submissions. We had to submit like a whole Google form, and it was super annoying. If we had Bam's campaign contract, we could have just had people sign up for the campaign and airdropped to all the users that signed up. So it would have been much easier. That's one example use case. So automate the rewarding early adopter process. Yes. So 100% that. And also just allowing like for a sign up form. So you don't have to do like a Google form. You can just sign a transaction saying I was here. So there are a lot of off-chain giveaways, campaigns going on the Flow chain, which requires participants to input their wallet address. So one example I just shared, like in Fast Flow or Bootcamp, people had to submit a Google form with their address, which is super annoying because you have to copy and paste the address, make sure it's the same. Reading them is really annoying. The project team has to manually put effort to handle the addresses, all that kind of stuff. This is one example the Dean or the Genius team could use. So this is sort of what I was going over before. You join the campaigns through Discord. Maybe you could even be in our Discord bot. Connect your wallet, say I was here, and then at the end they could do whatever they wanted with those listed addresses. So, it's sort of an open discussion. How would this fit into Emerald City? Would this help DAOs on Flow? What can we do? A new product, Web 2 to Web 3 Open ID converter. So it's, sort of like mapping a person to what their identity is on chain. But I really just wanted to highlight this because BAM has been putting a lot of work into this. And I'm really proud of BAM for, sort of going from no knowledge of Cadence at all and little developing experience to actually making a really cool project on Flow. So online round of applause for BAM. So that concludes the town hall.
Oh, Jacob, real quick.
Yes.
Regarding that tool, first, congratulations, Bam. that almost sounds like it could be used for the POAPs and other things in the AMAs and stuff like that.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right, because you're definitely right, because what this could do is it's really interesting. So I'm thinking through this in my head, because right now on collab.land, I'm pretty sure they have like a POAP, or there's some POAP bot on Ethereum right now that like you click a button and it like does something in the background and gives you a POAP. This could actually be in the back end of the Emerald bot, where the Emerald bot has a button, it runs some transaction with BAM's contract in the background and gives them a POAP, or what, you know, whatever the use case may be. But this is a great example of how to do that. So, yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea, Julian.
Yeah, because whatever the two things we talked about in the first section, I know I brought up POAPs, but there was something else prior to. I think they both, would utilize the same sort of tooling or the need for what BAM built.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, BAM. Let's talk about how we can put this in the back end of the Emerald bot. I think that's a good idea.
And I could almost guarantee that if that's in the back end of the Emerald bot and works for POAPs, I mean, it could go so fast through the Flow network. And I mean, if Flowverse had knew that was there with all the AMAs that they're doing with all of these projects, they would probably use it immediately in the Flowverse Discord.
Yeah, I 100%, right? Because Flowverse often does that sort of thing a lot. And one thing that I know that the Flowverse team does is they have a lot of AMAs with a lot of what's it called? Like they have like a lot of AMAs with like projects and DAOs, so it'd be a great idea to have that sort of thing as well. Yep. So we definitely want to avoid so it sort of stinks because it's hard to tell like what the internal collab land team is doing, because obviously we try to do everything as public as we can, but I'm not too sure what collab.land is doing. But either way, we want to make sure that we're not duplicating effort. Okay.
Even if it seems like we're duplicating effort, at the end of the day, it comes down to utility. So they may develop something that's trash, that we might develop something that's like way better. So
true. And the other thing that I'm obviously like I'm advocating for our thing here, but another problem with the collab.land bot is it's because it's spread out through like thousands of discords on Ethereum, and if it's now coming to Flow, it's going to be pretty slow. And I've actually seen that happening a little bit already. I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but the collab.land bot, because it's being used by so many people, it's like actually hella slow, and might not always. I'm not too sure how they're going to handle the Flow ecosystem either. So like Julian said, there's, even if we are sort of duplicating a little bit, obviously we want to avoid like the big stuff, but there's always room for improvement as well. And yeah, and like Bam said, like there's no way to actually like know what they're building either, because it's sort of like an internal team that's handling that. We are Sparta. True. Maybe our true goal should be to completely dominate the collab.land team until they're no longer existent. And then we tackle Ethereum as well and every other chain. Just kidding. All right, so for those of you that had to go, or it's super late for you, feel free to drop off now. That's all I had to say. I'm going to stick around as always, just for some extra comments here. And
quick question.
Yeah.
How many people are in our Discord now?
I think 1.5K. So
wow. Nice.
Yeah, so, and as always, like 1.5K produces maybe like at most 100 like super active, but I mean that's like brilliant, right? Like imagine having 100 people that are like actively engaged in a community. It's unbelievable. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
Can I make one more suggestion that we add possibly the I shared the link for the YC contract, but if we create that also as a tool, and I know that YC found that to be very useful, that a very big part of the startup process is having a legal document having these things already kind of spelled out that are kind of from best practices. And since we don't know that once we develop it, that we create that as a template and a tool that other DAOs and other people can just adopt, that sort of, financial document or what have you.
Yeah, I really want to look into that because that's something that we need like pretty bad. And so if we need it, then I'm sure a lot of other DAOs on Flow or projects on Flow would need it too. So Julian, I'd love to set up a call with you and whoever else wants to join to walk through that.
Cool.
It's Dean here. I've got a crypto specific one, which is based off the SAFE agreement. It's called a SAFT, SAFT, the simple agreement for future tokens. So that might be something which kind of I think is based on the same principle but crypto specific. Of course, you have to always think about what jurisdiction and like which specifics, because these things can get quite detailed without having a lawyer involved. It's not something you can just kind of edit yourself. But I do have a crypto specific one. Everyone wants to look at it.
Yep, that'd be awesome.
Definitely.
That'd be awesome.
Much appreciated.
I would very much like to see that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, let's so Matt would love to have you on that call as well, and you too, Support Monkey. So anyway, yeah, what we should do is we'll set up a call in the Emerald City Discord, and let's all chat and see how we can do that. Because like I said, this is almost essential to what we're doing here in Emerald City. So sooner rather than later.
Just a quick thing. Jacob Zeno here. So even I'm in the same space exploring the SAFE and SAFT model, trying to figure out what is the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
Coming from a C Corp and DAO model. So yeah, I would love to join that call as well.
Awesome. Yeah, would love to have you there, Player Error. Thank you for that. Bye, Fishy.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming, Fishy.
One more question I had, if I can shoot it.
Yeah, go ahead.
So currently, how are you guys thinking of the organization structure for DAOs? Are you trying to anchor it under traditional entities like C Corp, LLC, or is the DAO comes as a parent and then the C Corp or LLC comes as the child of that DAO? What is the right way to go about it?
So you're talking about how we are helping other DAOs get formed?
Just in general, let's say if somebody wants to come up with a DAO, right? How should we think about the organization structure?
I see. Yeah. So what I have been doing so far is some people have been asking me I want to make a DAO. How do I do that? As of right now, because we have little tooling and stuff like that, I've just been saying I'd love to help you. Maybe get a community together. A lot of things I do is saying well, do we even need a DAO? All that stuff. But anyway, that's sort of irrelevant. But at least what I imagine is we will have tools out there for people to use. And so we won't really be taking ownership or having people form DAOs under us, because that's not really the goal. The goal is to help people get started in their own realms. But we will be providing them and introducing them to the tooling we've created to help them out. And so this is where documentation is super important, is because when we have all these products and we have this reputation system and the voting process and all this sort of stuff, we want to document it so that other DAOs can look at that and sort of directly integrate that into their own DAOs. So it helps them get started quicker, but we won't be taking direct ownership of any of their stuff.
Awesome.
It's quite late in the call. I kind of don't want to open up a philosophical can of worms, but a DAO is a pretty broad concept. It's like saying, I want to build a website. Is it an e-commerce one? Is it educational? Is it a SaaS? It's just such a broad term. And I mean, it struck me a lot of the discussion we're having is really we're trying to be as broad as possible to think about what other DAOs need. But a lot of our discussion is around this type of DAO is almost like a not-for-profit DAO, right? We're trying to educate, we're trying to build some tooling that is good for the overall ecosystem. But we're not a typical DAO, for example, that a lot of them I'm seeing at the moment that I'm actually involved in another one, which is about going out and raising money to buy assets. Like you'll need a different set of tooling for that type of DAO, a different set of contracts, a different legal entity. Like for our DAO, like, it's mostly a community / ecosystem and, some kind of open source type, tooling, collaboration DAO, like, and correct me on that point if I'm wrong, but like my point is like, I don't know if we're ever going to create the tooling for every DAO in every situation. It may be worth taking a step back and say, what types of DAOs are we going to be kind of helping and tooling? Is that, I mean, of course, the broader it is applicable, the better, but it's a very broad term.
It's a fantastic point, because sometimes when I think about that, my head starts exploding, right? 'Cause it's like, there's some DAOs out there that are so unrelated to what we're doing here. Like you said, you explained it perfectly. We are sort of like a nonprofit ecosystem player, in that we're trying to educate, we're trying to build, we're trying to help, and some DAOs are not really focused on that. At least the current vision for Emerald City is we will be a use case, and we will develop DAOs for the Emerald City DAO, and through that we will apply those toolings to whoever is interested or wherever we can apply them to. For example, the Emerald bot, we developed that bot because I just thought it would be cool to have a beta tester role. And lo and behold, we developed it. And within a week, we have it deployed in 4 projects DAOs. So, of course, that may not work. And we may need to have like a more direct focus, because, if people, we need to have like a more direct focus, because we can't just like start building and then saying like, oh, if it's just not applicable, then we're screwed. We should develop products that we know will be usable in some capacity. So maybe like focusing on who exactly we're trying to help, and making that clear on like our website and stuff like that we're not building products for like financial DAOs. We're building products for maybe nonprofit community-based ones or something like that.
I mean, there's certainly going to be like, it's never black and white, right? There's going to be crossover areas, right? So for example, I could imagine like the Emerald bot that we have today, like that little kind of functionally could be applicable in a DAO that was buying, let's say, exotic sports cars for a set of high net worth individuals that wanted to kind of pool their kind of ownership and own the top 10 most rare sports cars in the world, because you'd need to maybe hold a token. You'd need to kind of prove that you hold that token to kind of get into their Discord or their community. And, the whole kind of, there's definitely things that'll be crossing over, but I think it's when you really get into like the token part of it, which we've kind of shied away from discussing, which I understand why, but like I'm seeing a lot of the DAO activity out there right now is very financial and very token driven. Which we're kind of not, and that's fine. We just need to be clear about like, maybe that's not our focus.
Yep.
And can I chime in on that real quick?
Yeah.
I sort of want to add 2 pieces to it, and I had written something and then I took it out of the chat. So let me see if I can repaste it. Okay. So I just added this in there. And this sort of goes to just rights ownership, whether it's copyright law, trademark law. And what I kind of want to do is sort of equate our discussion to that. And then also just capitalism, if you will, and ownership rights. So basically, one of the reasons why capitalism works so well is because exclusivity or something is given to someone for a certain period of time, copyrights, trademarks, etc. That the internal greed that humans have will drive you to innovate, create bigger, better, etc., etc. We're early dealing with flow, right? So I think if you look at and I'm just going to use the copyright world. The copyright system in the United States is non-exhaustive versus in Europe, it's an exhaustive set of laws on the books. So they've tried to cover every possibility that would happen. That's ridiculous. What we did in the United States is we set up a certain baseline of things, and I'm going to equate that baseline in what the context that we're talking about as these baseline tools like the Discord bot. If it ends up being the financial, contracts that we come up with, these sort of baseline things even the POAP portion to the bot, etc. These baseline tools that can be utilized across every single DAO, every Discord, etc. And then copyright law or the U.S. the system of copyrights and trademarks allows the courts to then create the new laws based on precedent, because founding fathers, etc., realized that things are going to change over time, and you can't legislate day one, 1776, what's going to happen in 2020. So likewise, and this is sort of what we were thinking about when it came to the to the the points. I'm sorry, the reputation scores and stuff. As things change, different people's skill sets might become more important. Blah blah blah. That's how the reputation will be doled out in the future. So likewise, if we set up a broad set of sort of baseline tools that we're working on, that we're creating, because there's so much that just needs to be done, and maybe we're borrowing from what people have done on Ethereum, so that these baseline set of tools are there. And then as we move along, we're able to go with the flow, because I think if we pigeonhole ourselves in the beginning, at some point in time, we'll be useless or obsolete. But if you're fluid and amoebic or agnostic or whatever other sort of words you want to use, you're now able to adapt as the ecosystem adapts, and you'll be able to survive longer. So that's just sort of my 30,000 foot view of how we may want to think about operating.
Yeah, I think that was really well said. I'm honestly not even going to expand on that, because I think that was I think you covered it pretty well.
Just in terms of, just to keep it simple though, because I think the problem with getting philosophical about it and trying to think it through too much, you can kind of get into navel gazing and analysis paralysis. I think, and that's my fault for bringing up this so late in the call, and so many I think all of my fellow people out in Asia are probably dropping off, but I think from a building and a practical perspective, it would be quite good to sort of strike a balance between a little bit of looking at what else is out there on other blockchains in terms of DAO tooling, and just say, look, these are the top 10 things, and we have to have 7 of them because they're just so commonly used. Let's just make sure that we at least replicate those on Flow. It's not innovative, but it's like they're there for a reason, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel on those. But then also striking a balance to say, look, unique to Flow because of something that happens in Cadence that we can't do in other development languages, or something that is unique to the projects that are building, the DAOs that are forming in the Flow ecosystem. While we do 3 of these projects that are sort of whether they're unique to what we need at Emerald City, or whether they're unique to just what we're seeing other projects in Flow build, those don't have to sort of replicate what's going on in. And so at least, other ecosystems will look at us and go, oh, those guys are really innovating and doing some work that's cool and unique. So I think it's striking a balance is what I'm saying between, look, we're kind of behind the curve when it comes to, if we're comparing ourselves to DAO tooling on other blockchains. So there's definitely some catch-up work. There's no harm in sort of picking out 3 or 4 things that'll probably keep us busy for the next 6 months, frankly, just to replicate what people are doing, but then also just trying to sprinkle in a few things that are more specific to what we need ourselves, or what we just believe, fits the Flow ecosystem.
That's so true. That's so true, because at least with the Emerald bot, right? It is really cool, but it is pretty much just what collab.land is doing on Ethereum. But what makes it I think special for Emerald City, that it's almost proof that Emerald City can produce. And so at least in our initial phases, we're set up in a really great spot, because we've had other blockchains collab.land and other products on other blockchains, mainly Ethereum, that have paved the way for us and allowed us to see what is working and what's not. And so we can use that in our initial stages of Emerald City to grow and prove that we can produce and we have a good community and build up strength in our community so that once we have those sort of things, like you said, we explore that other side of the balance where we start targeting more things that are, specific to DAOs on Flow, Emerald City, the Flow ecosystem, etc.
With respect to that, I spent a lot of time trying to find people who were building Flow and not just talking about it. And when I found you, it was like somebody's actually doing something. Up to that point, I struggled to find people actually doing things. Lots of people talking about it, but actually doing things with Flow. So if you keep doing that, people will come to you. Like, keep putting out the content, keep actually doing things, and you'll attract, talent.
Thanks, Support Monkey. Yeah, we're definitely trying our best. And, I think that definitely, is always in the background. Like when I go on the Emerald City Twitter account and I tweet that, oh, the Emerald City bot is live in the Matrix World Discord, that's a pretty big deal because that's, we're actually, like you said, we're actually doing something. It's actually in the Matrix World Discord and there's people verified. And that's why even during the town hall, I had the slides up, but when we got to that part, I actually showed you the Discord and, we went through and saw that the verify bot was literally in the Discord and people were verifying. And I think it's what you said, it's proof that something's happening and you build up strength through that because people see that and they're like, okay, they're doing something. How can I contribute? I want to be involved. I want, whatever. So for sure.
And it's the whole, if you give people something to do, like with Atlas, we built a community and the main way that I did it was just by giving people tasks. Like, hey, do this thing for me. And our only way to remunerate people was to give them free printable models. Like, that's the only trade that we could make. But it was enough. Like, you ask people to do a small thing, you give them a small bit of reward. It doesn't even need to be cash. And they'll keep coming back and doing it again because, like, we all want to feel like we belong to something.
Yep.
And like, that's what I see on Twitter. Besides the profile picture things, I see people looking for community and a way to feel like they're actually a part of something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like at least what I'm doing is not only trying to give people tasks, but as people are coming into the Discord, I'm trying to find out what are people's interests and what do they want to build so that I can direct them down that path and have them do that thing. So if people come in the Discord and they want to educate, let's lead them down that path. Let's teach them cadence. And then maybe in turn, they will then express interest in some Flow project, which is literally what Bam has done, right? Bam has done a fantastic job of identifying that he wanted to learn cadence and then building a project out of it. And this is the same thing for, I reached out and said, who wants to build documentation? People like it. Boom, let's lead them down that path. Let's have people documenting. Let's give skill points. So I that's pretty much what I've been doing and what I'm going to stick to.
If no one has anything else to chime in with really quickly, I just want to throw this out there. It's not totally off topic, but I think we all believe in Flow. I just wanted to put it out there. I just got a price alert that it dropped below $7.60, which if you guys have been following it, I want to say Flow came out somewhere in the $7 range last year. So this is, we all believe in Flow the way that I think we do. I know that I'm going to be picking up some Flow. It's almost like being able to get it when it first launched. So I just wanted to throw that information out there.
Yeah, hold the line, everyone. Hold the line. It's buy time.
That's your bot could be a way to onboard people into crypto more easily. Because once you're validated, you've now created a linkage between the EC ecosystem and whatever ecosystem that bot is in. You put tooling in that bot that allows people to do various things, and it's up to the various Discord owners to implement it. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
So just yes, Flow is down, but all of crypto is down. You have to see how much Flow is down compared to the other crypto, right? I mean, ETH is also down 3.5% in the last day, and Flow is down 3.5% as well. So it's the same. So I would be worried if it was only flow that was going down, but everything is going down.
Yep.
Like all the stock exchanges as well is going down. All the stock market, because America is raising the rent or something. I don't know what the central bank did, but I just heard some things that it's just the financial market reacts and then everything just follows.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
it's
I was just saying it from the standpoint of it's a buying opportunity. I mean, if you basically have a year of traction of a asset being out there and it's already gone up and it started to come down, but you're involved in that asset and you can see the projects coming and you see the roadmap and you see all of these things that are happening there. I'm just saying it's a good opportunity if you're someone who's thinking long term that this is, a great situation. I always, always buying the dips. I look for disasters. I love it when there's an issue and something becomes, undervalued. So I was just throwing it out there that it was almost back down to the price that it launched last year.
No. So it launched at, there was a 10-cent buy in October of 2020, and then in January 2021 you could buy them for 38 cents, and then it went live and it quickly rose to about 8 or 10, and then it just took off. And in April it was like $40, 42 I believe was the roof, and then it has gone up and down since then. But yes, it's dipping now. It has not been this low since January last year, I think.
Exactly. And I don't think I would have been in early enough to get it at 38 cents. So I would have been one of those people who probably got it when it went live at $8. So, that's sort of where I'm looking at it.
I mean, listen, worst case scenario, we just become a Reddit community and we just tweet buy flow all day and buy the dip, and we start spamming emojis everywhere.
I was just going to say, I think Bartek, your point is excellent. Like everything is in a bloodbath at the moment. It is a great buying opportunity for sure. But the more interesting question for me is like bringing it back to what we're doing here. Let's say you were, building the website for Emerald City, right? And that we'd agreed that we're going to pay that person. Like for me, it's about what do you denominate your value and your wealth in. So if you're going to get, let's say, 100 flow for building the website as a token amount, whatever, but literally get paid in the token, I don't think of course, everyone has to put food on the table, but I don't think the amounts we're talking about here, depends, what your use case and your financial position is. But, if I've got 50 flows sitting in my wallet, I can still go out and buy those same NFTs. They're actually cheaper in US dollar terms, but, it just depends what you're going to denominate your wealth in. And I think there's, it depends what your financial position is, but, I think for when you find yourself engaging in these communities where everything is kind of takes on its own new currency, for us, we'll probably start paying people, contributing, pricing things in flow. Like, yeah, if you want to cash out and go off, get off the rails of crypto and back into fiat, you're going to care about but within that community, pen flow, you've got to start denominating your wealth in like it's a mental hurdle.
Yep.
Now that's another thing that just with what you said, it just kind of jumped out at me. That if you all are bringing in all kinds of new people, they're going to have a variety of different currencies. Without meaning to, you could become a currency exchange as well. If you accept all manner of currencies for a variety of different services that you offer, you suddenly have fairly large pools of all of these that you can use to swaps, wraps, bridges, whatever.
Yep. Yeah, this has been great, everybody. I wish I could sit here all day, but as sort of like the de facto leader here, I do want to say that if people are tired, you can feel free to drop off. Although I will be here forever, but I don't want people to feel like they have to stick around.
Well, I was away making dinner, and then I come back, and you're still talking. So
yeah, I mean, like I said,
We're waiting for you.
Long. Yeah.
I'm sad you missed the part about the philosophy of what we're building, Bartek, because I would have liked to have got your input. I think you might have missed the part where we're talking about are we building tooling for community / nonprofit kind of ecosystem type of DAO, which we are ourselves? Or because I think that what you're going to see in 2022, it's already started late last year, is DAOs that are purely financial structures. Right. And they need they've got a totally different set of like legal considerations, tooling well, not completely, but there's definitely going to be some uniqueness and quite a bit of difference between, I mean, in full transparency, I'm involved with some other friends trying to do a DAO, and it's purely a financial driven DAO. I don't even think I could do it on Flow, because of like just all the precedent that is happening, and that's not to say I don't want it. I wouldn't want it to, but I think philosophically, I think at some point this group needs to decide what type of DAO it wants to be, and it doesn't need to be an either-or thing. There will be some things we build that are, like I made the point earlier, that are applicable across every DAO. But there's definitely a sort of nuance in a DAO is not a DAO is not a DAO.
Yep, that would be so. If somebody can TLDR that for me, that would be good. But I guess you just did, or
yeah, kind of.
yeah. I think it's interesting to discuss kind of like, because a DAO isn't a DAO. So I said last year that 2022 is going to be the year of the DAO, and I still believe that. Everybody's going DAO. It's crazy. But I just think people say they're going DAO, but what do they really mean? Because it's an overloaded term, and I don't like overloaded terms because you never know what they really mean. I could rant about overloaded terms all day and tomorrow, but I'm not going to do that. But still, they're saying they're building a DAO, but they're not doing the same thing. As you just said, like some are financial. I'm not sure what Blockto is doing, for instance. What would you classify that as?
I must admit, I didn't quite understand the point of Blockto's DAO, but then I haven't, to be honest, to be fair to them, I haven't done a lot of looking into it. But when I looked at the headline of their press about it, I didn't quite get what the point was.
I didn't either.
I think it's almost like a buzzword now. Like every shit coin had to have a NFT, attached to it last year.
Yeah, it's the same. I totally agree with you guys. So, it's a DAO to decide how the BLT funds is distributed, used. Yes, but I think so. So, Jacob, you said something that you quoted Chase earlier in the talk, and she said that you don't always make a good decision, right? Even though you own a token.
Yep.
And I just say, so many people own BLT tokens and stake them, but are they the right people to decide how much of BLT is used for the Porto ICO, right? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't own any BLT, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of getting into like the philosophy again, but this is why it's so interesting getting to talk to Chase, because she talks about these things all the time, and she actually has a podcast. I forget what the name is, but I'll link it afterwards in case anyone's interested. But she talks all the time about how token-based voting just completely. I mean, it depends on the DAO, but the incentives don't align, because at the end of the day, if you own a token, a big incentive for you is to vote in such a way that your tokens go up in value. And so that doesn't really lead to a system where your tokens are benefiting the overall community. And so, maybe in the case of Blockto DAO, if their DAO is literally formed just to decide things about the token, then maybe that makes sense. But certainly wouldn't make sense in the case of Emerald City. And one other thing I'd like to mention too is that a lot of you were sort of bringing up the idea of like DAOs, overloaded term. I also agree. And what I've been doing is a lot of people have like read the Emerald City tagline that we're educating and building tooling, and a lot of people have come to me and said, well, I have a group of friends, we have an NFT project, I want to make a DAO. And the first thing I always say to them is, well, do you really though? And that's because like people, in the same way that people just wanted to have an NFT, or they just want to own a coin, or they want to get airdropped something because it's cool, the DAO is like the quote unquote cool thing to do, and it's not always it's not always beneficial, because I don't think people realize that founding a DAO is not easy, right? Like getting a group of 3 to 4 friends together is not a DAO, really, right? it doesn't make sense. And so I would encourage all of you to, if people are asking you, how do I make DAOs? I think the first thing you should always ask is like, well, do you really understand like the idea of DAOs? And, you know, is this really something you want to embark on? Because it's a bigger deal than a lot of people think.
Completely agree. And in fact, the one thing, and again, it's personal opinion, but the one thing I think that is the reason I'm here is that I think at this use case where it is pretty much education, you know, sort of open source style tooling where you want to kind of, you know, share the kind of and grow the community and the ecosystem, I think a DAO makes complete sense. I don't think it always makes sense to replace a company or an investment structure. Not only because the traditional world is kind of going to have to start looking at these things more closely this year, but also because is a democratic vote really always the best way to run a structure? I mean, if, you know, take any company, if it was run by everyone just voting every day on what they built, what they did with their money, it probably wouldn't work. There is a time and a place for leadership, and I think a DAO kind of implies that everyone has an equal vote, and it may not be the case that everyone needs an equal or should have an equal vote.
Completely agree.
Piggybacking. Go ahead.
I say reputation's been the main discussion. So like I think that maybe on its face, you know, there's the nominal everyone's equal, but everyone knows that they're not actually. That's why the discussions right now are all around reputation. You can figure out whose voice matters more in any given context.
But that's the problem when you put a financial, like you're constantly trying to, this tension between I contribute the most from a knowledge and a participation, and that's why we have the reputation discussion. And then you have, but hang on, I put the most money in, or I hold the most tokens, and those things can be completely at odds with each other at times.
Exactly, and I think, you know, if I were to equate it to government systems and capitalism, it looks like China's sort of hybrid model is proven that it might actually be the best sort of way, where you've got this leadership group at the top that's setting more or less the base rules and allowing all of the people underneath and the players underneath to then just go out and do. But there's sort of a set of structure there, or a governing body that's sort of saying this is the direction that we're moving in now. You know, worker bees, ants, go.
Yeah, see, I guess I would say that I see from like a corporate perspective, like, and maybe this is just because of how we're currently structured. Most of the people who work for us are all contractors. So the kind of DAO structure we're looking for is because it is kind of an equal structure amongst those of us who run the company. So it's just an alternative way for us to cease being in a traditional business entity and still be able to transact in a way that if you hold and do things in your own currency, but then don't actually actualize on those currencies, you can have dramatically lower tax rates. Some of that for us is not necessarily the high-mindedness of Emerald City. It's far more experimental, I guess, from a business perspective.
Utopian.
Jacob, I'm guessing that you're, I mean, you know, like I think you used the word de facto leader. Like, I mean, even within a DAO, you can have people that are just generally stronger voices, or people who are the original thought, you know, provokers and to form the concept. But I mean, it sounds like you had a pretty clear vision, and you know, you articulated on, you know, that very first call. I mean, do you ever see that? I mean, does that need to be encoded? What happens if some people in the DAO start saying, well, actually, we think we can monetize this, and actually, we think we can get acquired by this, you know, I don't know if the DAO can get acquired, but like, have you thought longer term about this, or have you got a firm vision on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're getting into like, you know, at what point does sort of like the beginning voices sort of fade out and the community sort of like fade in, and a lot of people, you know, sort of like have, you know, I guess it's like, you know, obviously at the beginning, you know, some voices are going to be heard more because their names are out there. I mean, if you take me, for example, you know, I do the best I can to be fair and equal to everybody. But, you know, just by the nature of this system, when someone joins this DAO, the first name they recognize is most often me, only because that's the name that's tweeting and that's the name that's on the right hand side at the top. And I think initially, a lot of these community leaders will have more say, but once this gets to a point where, if take like the reputation system, for example, if we're doing like a sort of monthly rolling basis every 3 months, and the old tokens sort of expire, then my voice will, just because of the system, get less and less and less valuable over time as more people flood in. I'm not sure how DAOs handle that right now. I don't know how they maintain sort of like a check or balance that the DAO stays on like its initial trajectory, right? Because we're all imagining that this DAO is an educational thing and we build products and we do this together. But what happens in like 2 years from now if all of our voices sort of become a little less valuable and other voices flood in and want to take it in a different direction? Is it, do we want to prevent that? Is that something that we have the power to prevent? Or I don't know. I don't have an experience with DAOs to know that. Of course, personally, I would hope that the DAO stays on where it is now and its initial trajectory, but I don't know what that looks like in a year or two from now. Or maybe not a year or two, but in years from now.
I think if you set the baseline for, say for instance, Google had, what was it? Don't do evil or whatever. Their initial tagline, their initial mission statement. Maybe we need a mission statement, and then the DAO kind of moves along that mission statement.
Yeah. Some like baseline guideline to help the DAO live on and like stick to its initial goals. And I mean, you get like with this sort of thing too. I mean, this DAO, this DAO isn't like a financial one in which we're driven solely based off profit. We are a DAO founded on the idea of nonprofit and help and contribution and education, and in that realm, people that are interested in getting involved, at least I would imagine would be wanting to stay on that route as well. I don't really. I don't think that people would join this DAO and want to take it in a direction that would be harmful to the Flow community. Although I do think that, communities change and, Flow as it is now will not be Flow as it is in 2 years. It will be very different, much more advanced and probably more mainstream and all that kind of stuff. And so stuff that we're talking about now might not be as applicable to something, Flow in 2 years. And so if the ecosystem is changing, Emerald City will have to change with it. But like Julian was saying, its initial goals and its founding ideas will hopefully prevail as time goes on. And we can set up sort of like a check to make sure that it stays along that path.
Can I pose a question to everybody? What if we viewed Emerald City as though it were a blockchain, right? So if you think about like what Vitalik did when he created Ethereum, there was basically a baseline mission statement for what Ethereum was going to be, and then everyone was able to build these various products on top of Ethereum. And of course, I'm sure there were things that ended up being built on Ethereum that he didn't even think would be built at the time. So maybe if we sort of have that same idea and mentality, as though Emerald City is almost its own blockchain, and set that course, in that sort of sense. I mean, I could be totally off, but just wanted to throw that out there and see what thoughts.
No, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, when Ethereum was founded, however long ago, I mean, the founders of Ethereum probably had no idea. I mean, they probably had hopes, but they probably had no idea that it would get to the point it is now. I mean, even, people that founded, the blockchain idea in general, like Vitalik. But, as things become more developed and communities get more complex, more voices, become apparent, you adapt and you You know, like for example, like on Twitter right now, you see Vitalik. Actually, he just tweeted a Twitter thread that was like super long. He probably spent hours on it. That he detailed 20 ways or 20 hopes he had initially for Ethereum, and for each thing that he tweeted, how it went right or wrong. And he did that for every single one. And it was really interesting. It was actually a really interesting read because some of them he was like, you know, spot on, and some of them he said he was completely off, and you know, they had to adapt. And so I can only imagine Emerald City going through the same sort of process where you know, we adapt as time goes on, and we all just work in our best effort to, you know, contribute in the best way we can. I also tend to talk in abstracts a lot. So I don't know if what I'm saying is even that helpful, but I try to answer in the best way I can.
Extremely helpful.
Thanks, Julian.
I think this is a relatively safe space. I mean, because it is, most of us aren't here with commercial motivations, right?
Yeah.
I think, you know, we want to meet other people in the, you know, I can be pretty straightforward about it. I want to meet, you know, people in the flow ecosystem. I want to learn from them. I want to, you know, maybe I can help out, and, you know, I want to say I'm part of something cool and have a bit of a community. And like, that's it. I don't have any like, oh, I want us to launch a coin and I want the token to be, you know, like there's almost pretty much zero financial motivation for me in this. I don't know if other people have, but, and I think that makes this DAO like quite likely to succeed, because there's not going to be conflicting. I mean, look, there'll be conflicting ideas of what we do for sure. But imagine trying to do this when people have got money at stake, or an asset, or, you know, a life's work of a project. Like, this is what they're going to build, like Ethereum. Like, I don't think we're in that space. This is a relatively benign environment, if you ask me.
Yeah, you know, just expanding on that, you know, Dean, when I initially founded Emerald City, you know, I had a lot of hopes for it, of course, and it's far exceeded any of my expectations. But one of the initial shocks for me was when I remember you had reached out and said, you know, the Genius team would be happy to, you know, do some, you know, artwork and design and stuff like that. And to me, that was such a shock, because it was like the fact that someone would be willing to take time out of their day to go about that, just for the sake of community, was like unbelievable. You know, I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I really appreciate that. And, you know, I think that's so true. And why I see so much value in Emerald City is because everyone here is here just for the sake of being here, and for learning and meeting, and you know, literally whatever it may be, whether you want to work on a project and put it on your resume for school, or it could be literally, you know, we're all coming from so many different backgrounds and places, and it just, to me, having someone like go out of their way to do that was like, wow. And I try to carry that on myself.
It's kind of weird to me, because I'm certainly not at any level that I would call myself a coder. I mean, I can fiddle around, but, you know, I worked for a company which was an open source, came from the open source world, and it was, I mean, I don't mind mentioning the name Magento, which was probably the most popular e-commerce system in the planet, and it's open source. And it got acquired by Adobe, and there's a commercial part to it, much like Red Hat has a commercial part to Linux, but Linux has its, you know, open source. So I guess for me, it was not surprising that, like, I mean, if you're a developer, like, there's always people wanting to learn and just kind of, you know, collaborate and have community. And so I think this was I mean, you should never have had any doubt that people would want to help out, I guess is what I'm saying, given that so much of the developer community and the blockchain community particularly is so open source in nature, right?
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Yeah, and I definitely think open source has its advantages, especially nowadays. And, you know, if we're thinking also in the context of Web3, where, you know, the ownership is going basically back to the community and not, you know, in the hands of of a few, then, you know, that's definitely, you know, the right wave or the right track.
Yep. What is? I've never
Yeah, I
heard
think
of Red Hat. I'll look
so.
that up.
Moyes just made that point. I think it's a great one. Basically, Red Hat, it was a company started around building, like, if there's great popular open source software out there, in this case it was Linux. Magento was, the e-commerce kind of equivalent. People build commercial companies around that by providing sort of more enterprise level kind of tooling, sort of services, SLAs, all sorts of things that basically say, look, I believe in the Linux open source kind of philosophy and development and the platform itself, but I'm Chase Bank, or I'm, XYZ company, but I need that. Plus I need like some enterprise and commercial team behind like what I'm building on for me to be secure and to kind of run SLAs. And so that's basically what Red Hat is. It's a company that kind of takes Linux and puts a commercial sort of operational and tooling layer around the core Linux. Magento had the same thing. It had a community version, and now it has Adobe putting a kind of a wrapper around it for big companies that want to build their websites on that, because the ecosystem is there, right? All the developers there. It's easy for them to hire those people. So that's why people get drawn to the open source world, but they still want some of the sort of, more production, enterprise type stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, Moises' point, I think, is maybe like we can be building open source style tools, but maybe someone, let's say, Jacob, you decide to leave your job at, Decentology or whatever, and then it's like you form a commercial organization which says, I'm going to basically take these tools that come out of the DC community and I'm going to extend them. I'm going to do like the extra 3 features and a team and support, which make it like that, whichever company can really rely on these things beyond just being worried about what happens if the community goes in a direction they don't want.
Interesting.
Well, to that point, Dean, if I remember correctly, I had some dealings with Magento a long time ago, and what's interesting is some of the folks who I interacted with at Magento ended up creating their own projects because they were privy to everything that was happening there, and then they went out and created things that were based on Magento. And I think Jacob said early on, and I can't remember if it was in the last town hall, if it was a private discussion that we had, but that the smart contracts that are developed within EC would have a component where, and Jacob, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but where those open source contracts, if you will, that are developed within EC have a mechanism where EC would receive royalties from people who implement them into their projects.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, Julian. So if you think about like once a token is, if a token were to be introduced, it might be smart, and I don't know, but it might be smart if some of the tooling that is developed through Emerald City or whatever it may be has some sort of like royalty feature where other DAOs that wanted to use it had some, whether it be like first time use or something like that, were to pay back to Emerald City. That was sort of like an initial, what's it called? Like I guess like monetization strategy. But if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And that's something that honestly, I haven't thought too much about until some sort of like payment mechanism would be involved. But, that also is like proof of another part of that discussion was like the auditing layer. So if we are to introduce smart contracts to other DAOs in the Flow ecosystem, we want to make sure they're like audited and stuff like that. And so one way of doing that is having like an internal auditing structure where people would almost like stake tokens on the security of the smart contracts. And that way, if the smart contracts are, hackable or problematic in some way, those tokens would get slashed and redistributed to the people that were harmed. And this is sort of tying into Decentology's initiative, something that I'm working on the side called the Hyperverse, that sort of includes this like auditing structure and this royalty structure into smart contracts on Flow. But that's sort of like a to be determined later thing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jacob. Like I've been going through this because we're trying to do our token, right? And not saying we're the first or the only ones, but like the only people that when I first started deciding to build our own Genie token for the purposes of fundraising and utility and all sorts of like reasons why we wanted a token, you know, I mean, the Dapper Labs team themselves, you know, hands up when we don't really have anyone that audits, you know, smart contracts for the purposes of like launch pads and token generation for fundraising. Like there's people that do it, but they're typically not in, you know, they're not like, there just hasn't been enough flow based fungible token projects that have gone through this. So like if Decentrology is doing something like that, I definitely think there's probably about 25 different projects that would take you up on that if there was a smart contract auditing, especially when they need to kind of show that to the Launchpad or the IDO platforms that, hey, you know, there's no security breaches, that, you know, this thing can't get, you know, it's a tick box that a lot of these projects, and I'm going through this, will have to go through, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of people providing that service.
100%, yeah, and I would love to, like, just separately, since this got brought up, I would love to on like a different call sort of walk anyone through like the hyperverse model and stuff like that if anyone's curious. But yes, the idea is that, you know, the hyperverse, if built into these Emerald City smart contracts, would have that internal auditing within them, so that projects on Flow would know they're secure and know they're okay and all that, just like you were describing, Dean. And also, in addition to that, have like the composable feature, which is another, this is like sort of getting into the weeds, but another part of the hyperverse system is not only the auditing and the royalty fees, but also like the composability aspect, where if you imagine, like, for example, on OpenSea, you know, you have like an ERC 721 or an ERC 20 contract, and people that want to make their own fungible token just spin up a quick one. That sort of composability thing, you can imagine, is also pretty important on Flow with DAOs, because if we spin up a token for our DAO, you know, that probably has a lot of auditing involved. It probably has a lot of developing involved. You know, there's not a lot of Cadence developers out there. So maybe there's a way for us to make those contracts composable for other DAOs that want to get started, so they can found their token without even having to code any Cadence at all. And have that built-in auditing as well. So, you know, they don't have to go through the whole mainnet deployment, all that. And of course, right now, you know, with the Flow team, there's like a 6-month mainnet deployment phase and all that. That's sort of irrelevant to the Hyperverse anyway, because even if that system didn't exist and you could just deploy to mainnet right away, you would still have to develop your own token, audit it, all that stuff. And so in terms specifically DAO tooling, you know, the Hyperverse, and I guess would expand way beyond DAOs. But if we just think about it from the DAO point of view and how we can contribute to that, our DAO tooling and smart contracts that we develop to be beneficial for Emerald City would be available to everyone, audited, etc. But again, we will likely get into this discussion much later.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've always, and I hate to say it, but I've always sort of viewed EC, and don't take this from the standpoint of like Google, where Google is now. But very early on, Google created a whole bunch of tools that we needed to use on the web, and they were just free for everyone to use, whether it's, the forms or spreadsheets, whatever docs, whatever there were, whatever projects or applications that there were. And I sort of see EC doing a lot of those things for the Flow community. And I think if, having that hyperverse stuff in the background where these things are already audited, I think what it does is it makes EC a trusted provider, if you will, or a trusted entity where people, basically want to come, and when we introduce something new, they're automatic. It's a no-brainer. You just grab it, you plug it in, and it works.
Yep.
And that reputation is there for EC.
Yep. Exactly. And just like Matt said, profit should be the side effect, not the purpose, which is where traditional companies like Google go wrong. So sort of like expanding on that, and I if I do this wrong, Matt, let me know. But what I view is that, we develop the tooling for our purposes, our example use case. We put it out there for everyone to use, and then, if because we have internal auditing and it's on the Hyperverse and all that, and we end up getting some profit from that, then, that's a result of us providing like a service and a product to the community, and we weren't developing that tooling because we just want profit. I mean, that's not the point of this DAO at all. It's to benefit. But if those tools can be used by others, and if quickly and without having to go through that whole phase, then we can definitely provide that to people.
We can ask a dumb question, perhaps, but we talk a lot about Collab Land. What is their model? Like, are they a for-profit?
Collab.land. I think they have like a not a dumb question at all, because I don't know the answer, but I think they have like a what's the term? Like a VIP, like you buy like an extra part and you get like more benefits, whatever that is. Like if you wanted to pull Collab.land into this Discord and verify some ERC-721 token, it's totally free, but I think they have
freemium model.
Yeah, it's like they have like a like they basically like allow you to buy some like extra feature, I think, is what they do. But I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, freemium. You come in, you get the basic stuff for free, but if you want to, have something that's a little more detailed or robust, then you pay X, Y, and Z to unlock these other, options.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's common for a lot of Discord bots, even like beyond like besides like blockchain in general, like a lot of these like Me6 bots and all that, like they all do that sort of freemium thing.
But they're not a DAO. They're a commercial corporate entity that happens to have a freemium business model where some stuff's free and some stuff's paid.
Exactly. They are certainly not a DAO, no.
Right. They just provide tooling for DAOs.
Yep.
Now, one thing that you might be able to do is, and this is straight legalese here, but custody matters when it comes to money. If anything that, like, let's say that BAM's campaign tools are super popular and lots of people want to use them, instead of the money routing from whomever is using the tool to EC to BAM, what if instead in the contract address it went to BAM and then BAM paid EC? And then you've got less custody issues, because if you're going to do any kind of taking money back in for tooling, you 100% are going to need somebody to look at that financially wise, because you're going to take custody of a lot of money potentially. And even if you're a nonprofit, you're going to need very good record.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We're sort of going down this path. I'd imagine we were going to explore this a bit later, but I'm happy to do it now. In terms of like the who's getting paid, one other thing about the Hyperverse is that so the people that are developing these modules, so let's say, and when we think about module, let's think about like a contract, for example. If we view BAM's campaign contract as a module, what happens is that module will get published to the Hyperverse. There will be some internal auditing like we discussed. There will also be a revenue stream, infinite revenue stream to the original developer of that module. And, it will be out there for other projects to use. And then whoever uses that will pay not only like, will pay certain funds to the module, right, for using it. Part of those funds will go to the auditors. Part will go to the developer. And, that's how that system would work. And so if we imagine the, smart contracts or modules coming out of Emerald City, let's say BAM had some, let's say BAM developed this campaign contract, then BAM would be getting part of that revenue, that infinite revenue stream of people using that campaign contract. And that doesn't even mean that people would have to use it in a DAO form. I mean, if people wanted to use BAM's campaign contract in some random other thing that wasn't a DAO, they could totally do that, right? Because it's on the Hyperverse, but BAM would still be getting paid for that. So, we want to make sure that, because if BAM develops something through Emerald City, Emerald City shouldn't be claiming all of that or, however much, because that could have just been a personal project that he did and then he just published it out there. So, and of course, Emerald City could take maybe a percentage of those developer funds as well. I'm not sure, but there would certainly need to be some royalty towards the original developer.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's just about definitions. Like, are you a platform that's providing a service, or are you like an aggregator of developers? And people like, Dean is labeled as hiring, Melkonian is labeled as hiring. If they hire somebody through Emerald City, does Emerald City get a cut? Is it like Fiverr? Or, they're, I don't know, kind of random. I think you might see where I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, to tell you the truth, like the ultimate answer is I just don't know. So I'm just kind of like talking, just spitting ideas here. Sort of like we were talking about during the town hall. I mean, if we have a building team that's developing a product and we put it out there, then those people that are developing the products will be getting paid through Emerald Token, right? So they are getting paid. Not sure if that's coming. Like you said, it really is about definitions, right? It's like, how are we defining ourselves out there in the space? Like I presented during the town hall, I imagine a system where we have a team, they're developing, they put the product out there, they get paid by Emerald City, and then maybe Emerald City takes a cut of that module or whatever, takes a cut of that product, so that in the future, Emerald City can fund more contributors and more people developing. And it's sort of like a flywheel, like they fund more and more, people develop more products, Emerald City gets more funds to fund more people. So
the Open Compute project follows a very similar logic. We're trying to set up an open print alliance that follows the exact same logic. It's tried and true, it works. But the custody of the money part, and then what we found where we hit walls, people would want to know, okay, if I'm going to put money into your nonprofit, your open source, produces these tools, they get, we're looking for here, squirmish about like how we're going to spend money, to whom we're going to send it to. It's just a thing that I guess worth spending some time coming up with frameworks for.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So I know that we have been, I mean, what a discussion, right? I mean, we've been here for what, 2 hours, 15 minutes. I'm going to officially end things there because we could talk about this forever, but let's all go enjoy our Saturdays or Saturday nights and weekends. Thank you all. Seriously, thank you all very much. The recording of this will all be on YouTube in case anyone wants to check it out. We'll regroup for another town hall at some point. For everyone that signed up for the docs and the Emerald City website, I'll be reaching out to you in groups. So let's get that going. And let's keep expanding on the reputation idea, because I think that through the reputation idea, we'll touch back on all these topics again, about how to represent, voting power and all that kind of stuff. So thanks, everybody. Profound Madman. No worries at all. The recording is quite long. It might be intimidating. So if you want to recap, you can reach out to me. I'll be happy to provide it. And bye, everybody. I'm waving at my screen.